As the NBA regular season winds down, the Boston Celtics are officially entering crunch time. The mission is clear: fight for the top seed in the Eastern Conference and make a serious push for back-to-back championships. But just as things are heating up, the injury report is starting to cool down the mood a little. And right now, one of the biggest concerns is Jaylen Brown. He's already missed 3 straight games, and Celtics fans are starting to ask that one nagging question: what exactly is going on with him? And when can we expect him back on the court? Jaylen was on an absolute tear in March. He looked locked in, playing some of his best basketball of the season. Through 6 games, he was averaging close to 20 points, grabbing about 6 rebounds, dishing out 5 assists, and shooting a solid 40% from the field. Now, yeah, his three-point percentage wasn't anything to write home about, but we've seen that shift in his game. He's not relying on the deep ball as much. He's using his strength, his athleticism, driving to the rim, making plays happen inside. That's the Jaylen Brown that makes the Celtics offense so much more dynamic. But then just like that, things hit a snag. 4 games ago, in a matchup against the Brooklyn Nets, Jaylen went down in the 3rd quarter. He didn't come back for the 4th, and immediately the alarm started going off. Later, the team released a statement confirming that he'd suffered a bone bruise along with something called a posterior impingement in his right knee. Now look, we're not doctors over here. We're just fans who want to see our star on the court, but that does not sound pleasant at all. The initial plan was to have him miss the next couple of games and get reevaluated on Monday. And here we are, still waiting. He already sat out against the Portland Trail Blazers, and as more games tick by, the urgency starts to creep in. Not just because of the standings, but because of what's really at stake here. This Celtics starting 5 has barely had time to build real chemistry. Out of a possible 82 games, this group has only played about 20 together. That's not ideal heading into the playoffs. The more reps they get together, the better they'll perform when it counts. So yeah, getting Jaylen healthy isn't just about getting another scoring option back. It's about making sure this core lineup gets those final crucial minutes to click before the postseason lights come on. And on a personal level, this injury couldn't have come a worse time for Jaylen. The guy is having a phenomenal season. He's coming off a strong playoff run last year, where he was absolutely pivotal in Boston's deep push through the Eastern Conference. And now, here he is again, showing up big when it matters. But just as he's making his All-NBA case, his knee decides to act up. He's currently at 56 games played this season, and to be eligible for All-NBA honors, he needs to hit at least 65. So if he misses even a few more, that accolade could be off the table. And look, maybe that's not the team's biggest priority right now, but make no mistake, these things matter to players. Legacy matters. Respect matters. And you better believe Jaylen wants that recognition. But let's be honest, the main focus right now is health. Playoffs are the goal. The Celtics are sitting in a strong position overall. They're way ahead of teams like the New York Knicks, and yeah, they're a few games behind the Cleveland Cavaliers, but the race isn't over yet. Boston's been on fire lately, riding a 5-game win streak, including some tough road games. Meanwhile, Cleveland's been slipping, dropping 4 of their last 5. So yeah, the gap is real, but with 10 games left in the season, crazy things can happen. The Celtics just need to stay hot and hope Cleveland keeps stumbling. And here's where it gets interesting. Cleveland is elite at home, one of the best home teams in the league. But on the road, not so much. Meanwhile, Boston is the best road team in the NBA. That's not just a cool stat, that's a huge deal. Because if this team can somehow leapfrog Cleveland in the standings, that means home court advantage in the playoffs. And we've seen how much that changes things. Imagine TD Garden in Game 7. Nobody wants to walk into that building with their season on the line. So yeah, the stakes are massive. But this isn't going to be easy. Not with injuries starting to pile up. Not with the pressure mounting. That's the balance Joe Mazzulla and his coaching staff have to find. How hard do you push to climb the standings? How much do you prioritize rest versus momentum? Every decision matters now. You can't afford to overwork your stars, but you also can't limp into the playoffs with no rhythm. It's a tightrope walk, and every misstep can cost you the whole thing. And circling back to Jaylen, that's why this injury situation is so important. It's not just about the next game or even the next week. It's about the big picture. You want him back, but you want him at 100%. A bone bruise might not sound as scary as a ligament tear, but it's still painful. And if it lingers, it can mess with your movement, your confidence, your explosiveness. And that's the last thing this team needs heading into the most intense stretch of the year. The good news is there's still time. There's still room to maneuver. And this Celtics squad has shown resilience all season long. Even without Jalen, they've found ways to win. But make no mistake, if Boston is going to make it through the East, they need him. Not just as a scorer, but as a leader, a two-way force, a guy who can swing a playoff game on both ends of the floor. So the question now becomes, can the Celtics catch Cleveland? Is that number one seed still within reach? Or are we chasing a ghost at this point? Well, if we're being real, it's going to take perfection. Boston has to keep winning. Cleveland has to keep slipping. And the Celtics have to do all of this while managing injuries and keeping their eyes locked on the bigger prize. But hey, if any team can pull that off, it's Boston. This group's been through the fire. They've been to the finals. They know what it takes. And as long as they're healthy, as long as Jalen gets back in time, this team is going to be a nightmare matchup for anyone. So let's see what happens. The countdown is on. The Celtics' fight for the top seed is far from over, but it's going to take something special to close that gap with Cleveland. The Cavaliers have been dominant all season, but these last few weeks have exposed some cracks. They've struggled on the road, and when they're not in their comfort zone, they suddenly don't look as unbeatable. That's exactly why Boston needs to capitalize on this moment. If Cleveland keeps sliding, the door is wide open for the Celtics to take control of the East. But to do that, they need to be nearly perfect in the final stretch of the season, and they need their key players to step up in a big way. Jason Tatum has been playing at an elite level, as expected, but he can't do it alone. He needs Jaylen Brown back, not just for the scoring boost, but for the defensive intensity, the leadership, and the chemistry that's been slowly building with this starting five. Derek White has been phenomenal all year, proving to be one of the most underrated two-way guards in the league, but again, he's not enough on his own. Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday have fit in seamlessly, but they still need time to build more rhythm with the group. This is why every game matters now. Every quarter, every possession is an opportunity to fine-tune things before the playoffs. And that's what makes Jaylen Brown's injury situation so frustrating. The Celtics know they need him. They know he's a game changer. But they also can't afford to rush him back and risk a more serious problem down the road. A bone bruise might not sound like a major injury, but in basketball, any knee issue is a concern. The last thing Boston wants is for this to linger into the playoffs, limiting Brown's mobility or causing him to second-guess his explosiveness. That's why the medical staff is taking this carefully, making sure he's fully ready before he steps back onto the court. But the clock is ticking. The Celtics have just a handful of games left, and the standings are tighter than ever. If they're going to steal that top spot from Cleveland, they need to go on an absolute tear. They can't afford slip-ups. They have to keep up this winning streak, and they have to hope the Cavaliers continue to falter. Because if Boston secures that number one seed, everything changes. Having home court advantage throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs would be massive. TD Garden is one of the toughest places to play in the league, especially in the postseason. Opposing teams know that walking into that atmosphere in a Game 7 scenario is a nightmare. That's why this battle for seeding is so crucial. And let's not forget the teams lurking just behind Boston. The Knicks have had an impressive season, and while they might not be real championship contenders just yet, they're still a threat. The same goes for teams like Orlando and Indiana, young, hungry squads that could surprise people in the playoffs. Boston can't afford to take their foot off the gas, not just to catch Cleveland, but also to make sure they're not suddenly looking over their shoulders at a team making a late-season push. For Joe Mazzulla and his coaching staff, this is where things get tricky. They have to find the perfect balance between pushing for that top seed and making sure their stars don't burn out before the playoffs even begin. It's a delicate situation. Play your guys too much, and you risk injury or fatigue. Rest them too much, and you lose momentum. It's a constant chess match, and every decision matters. And speaking of decisions, let's talk about the way Boston has been closing out games recently. One of the biggest improvements from last season has been their ability to execute in crunch time. In years past, we saw this team struggle in late-game situations, blowing leads or failing to get quality shots in the final minutes. But this season, there's a different level of composure. Whether it's Tatum taking over, White making clutch plays, or even Porzingis providing a reliable inside presence, the Celtics look far more confident when games go down to the wire. That's the kind of growth that makes a real difference in the playoffs. But of course, all of this still comes back to Jaylen Brown. When he's on the floor, everything just clicks better. The defense is sharper, the transition game is more dangerous, and the offense has that extra layer of versatility. He's one of the few players in the league who can truly impact the game on both ends, and his presence makes life easier for everyone else. So the question remains, when will he be back? The team's latest update suggests he'll be reevaluated soon, but there's no guarantee he'll be ready immediately. It's possible the Celtics take a cautious approach and hold him out for another few games. And that leads to another major question. Can Boston continue this winning streak without him? They managed to stay afloat so far, but the schedule isn't getting any easier. There are some tough matchups ahead, including a showdown with the Knicks and some tricky West Coast games. If the Celtics can survive those without Brown, they'll be in a fantastic position. If not, they could find themselves locked into the second seed, forced to go through Cleveland on the road if they want to reach the finals. And let's be real, this whole season has been about getting back to the finals. After last year's disappointment, this team is on a mission. They know they have the talent. They know they have the depth. Now it's just about putting it all together at the right time. That's what these final games are all about. Fine-tuning, staying healthy, and building as much momentum as possible. So, can the Celtics pull it off? Can they actually catch Cleveland and take the #1 seed? Or are they destined for the second spot, forced to battle their way through a tougher playoff path? A lot depends on what happens in these next few games. And even more depends on when Jaylen Brown finally makes his return. One thing's for sure, Boston is right there. They have a legitimate shot. But the margin for error is razor thin. Every game counts. Every possession counts. And in just a few weeks, we'll find out if this team has what it takes to finish the job and enter the playoffs as the team to beat in the East. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. The rumors have been buzzing for weeks, but now the question on every Boston Celtics fan's mind is, will Donovan Mitchell, the NBA's high-flying, record-breaking all-star, be donning green next season? The Cleveland Cavaliers star has become one of the most electrifying players in the league, and his name has been thrown into the mix for a potential blockbuster trade. Known for his ability to light up the scoreboard, Mitchell's 71-point performance and multiple 40-point games last season are just a few reasons why he's one of the most coveted players in the league. But could the Celtics, with their championship ambitions, make a move to bring him into the fold? If this trade goes through, the Celtics could gain a dynamic scorer who would complement Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown in a way few others could. Mitchell's explosive style of play and ability to take over games could elevate Boston's offensive game to new heights, adding the scoring punch they might need to push them over the edge in the playoffs. With Boston's defense already formidable, adding a player like Mitchell could create one of the most lethal duos, or rather trios, in the NBA. But with the Cavs reportedly seeking a hefty return, what would the Celtics need to part with? The price could be steep, but the reward? Worth it. In a city that thrives on championship glory, the arrival of Mitchell could change everything. Imagine the Celtics with another elite scoring option on the floor, drawing defenders away from Tatum and Brown, opening up endless possibilities for a team that already made a strong push last season. However, as exciting as this potential trade sounds, it also raises questions. Would Mitchell's arrival be enough to finally bring the Larry O'Brien Trophy back to Boston? With time ticking down to the trade deadline, the Celtics have a big decision to make, and every fan in Beantown is waiting on the edge of their seats to see how it unfolds. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.